Worldwide sound. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Hello, and how are you this day? It is morning here in the concept called the United States. We are TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, the world's greatest radio, and now you are in touch with the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. The phone lines are open, and you can begin to call in at 1-877-932-9766. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. You can also view the program if you would like by going to the YouTube channel, typing in the word Talktainment, and then typing in the word radio, and then scroll down to the box where it says where you can put in Talktainment number 2, and then you are live. By the way, you can subscribe and like that button. You can also go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage and just click Listen Live, and you are right there. That is the way that we would prefer you do that. And you can also go to Facebook.com/Talktainment, and you can hear the entire show. A lot of people like to do that. Today's subject is actually going to be a Q&A session. We do that to clean out the Gmails that we have accumulated, and we also take your calls live on the air, so you can begin to call in now. Q&A for Mr. Fuller. He will suggest, some say answer, wherever you want to do your concerns, and go from there. It is imperative that as you have begun to listen, and a lot of people have, that you think, speak, and act in a codified way as you are still learning. And this program is all about that, and Mr. Fuller has many suggestions on how to continually do that and be consistent with it. Okay, also don't forget donations, particularly for the second hour. If this program really means that much to you, then donate to the second hour of the program so we can continue to do what we do. Okay, let me introduce to some and present to others Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you this day?
Good morning. I am still learning.
Okay. All righty, still learning. Okay, today's topic, Mr. Fuller, actually is going to be a Q&A, so let me start off with a question from the Gmail. This person has two questions, so get ready. This is going to start in the Revised Expanded Edition on page 298. And for those of you who have the book, in which Mr. Fuller will talk about in about 40-something minutes, you can turn to page 298, and we can go from there. Oh, wait a minute. Well, let me take this phone call first. Caller, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Hello.
What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
My question to Neely Fuller is, I'm calling you. All white people have sexual intercourse with black people. Are they aware of their child abuse?
Mr. Fuller, did you understand this question?
I did not understand the question.
Okay, brother, could you speak clearly and slowly so that Mr. Fuller can address that, please?
Hello?
Yes.
Are all white people who have sexual intercourse with black people, are they aware that they're committing child abuse?
Okay. Mr. Fuller, did you hear that?
Oh, I don't know. But I know that that's what it is according to the code. And why is this? Based on logic and evidence. First of all, we start with the premise that we're in a system of racism. So racism is basically a prison system. So in a prison system, if the prison masters, particularly if it's an illegitimate prison, like a concentration camp or an internment camp during war, and that's what the world has been made of since the establishment of the system of white supremacy, presumably, using logic, and the system of white supremacy itself is a labor camp, concentration camp, internment camp, at war, prison system, then it is logical that if people are put into a prison, the prison has inmates, and that's the people that are put into the prison by force, and the prison masters have put them there by force. Then if the prison masters are in a category of people who then have sexual intercourse with the people who are the convicted people, the prison inmates, the people who are in the internment camps, in that system, the prison system, the prison masters, if they have sexual intercourse with any of the prisoners, that is child abuse because the prisoners are in the position of being children. They're completely helpless, and they're being taken advantage of. So prison masters are not supposed to have sexual intercourse with the inmates because that is child abuse in function. Because people who are inmates of any prison have been put in a childlike position. It doesn't make any difference about the age of the person, how long they have been in the universe. It has to do with the position that you have. If you're in a childlike position, and victims of racism are in a childlike position, meaning what? By childlike, they are completely dependent on the people who are masters over them. And if those are illegitimate masters in an illegitimate prison that never should have existed in the first place, and they're treated in a harsh manner by being there, that's just being there itself is harsh. If the prison itself is illegitimate, which the system of racism is an illegitimate prison for the non-white people of the entire planet. So that's the answer. The answer is yes. It is child abuse, and that's the explanation, and I hope that you understand it, and if you don't, then you can ask me a further question in connection with that for clarification.
Okay.
So I want to find out if the person who is listening, see, just don't take that and run with it. Yes, it's child abuse because the victims of white supremacy are children. I'm a child. I'm a victim of white supremacy. That's how I identify myself. I'm more that than I am anything else. Why? Because I've been put in that position. That is my description. You try to give me any other description, nothing is more outstanding than that. I'm a person. I'm a male. I have a certain age. I have certain abilities. But victim of white supremacy is my major title. There's no title that I have, Neely Fuller Jr., no title that I have that is greater than victim of white supremacy. Because the white supremacists have made it clear that that is my title more than anything else. Any title that I will ever get, as long as white supremacy exists. So I'm in a childlike position. So if I have sexual intercourse with a white person of any kind, regardless of what the arrangement is, that's child abuse, because I'm in the position of a child. Always have been. There's no such thing as a mature or a so-called adult black person anywhere on the planet in 2019 in a system of white supremacy, unless we say that there is no system of white supremacy, in which case then that would not be true. But I'm saying that it is true. It's either true or false. Mm-hmm. Either we have a system of white supremacy or we don't.
Okay. Did you?
I hope that I've made it clear.
Okay. Did you understand that, caller, and did you have another follow-up to that?
No.
Okay.
No problem.
All right. Thank you.
One more question, please. How can I order Mr. Fuller's book to Sweden? Is it available?
Okay. Normally we don't do it now, but Mr. Fuller, he wanted to know how can he get your book?
ProduceJustice.com. Go to ProduceJustice.com. The information is there.
Okay.
Okay. All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And that goes for anybody else who wants to order the book. But Mr. Fuller will talk about it usually at the 45-minute mark of the program, ProduceJustice.com, how you can get the book. But thank you again, caller. Okay, going to the Gmails. This is from April, Mr. Fuller, and she just says this. On page 298 of the Code Book, Revised Expanded Edition, under the 8th area, sex, bullet number 2 states that both agree to present themselves to each other completely naked. Bullet point number 3 states not touching each other's bodies at any time during the meeting. What is the constructive purpose of sitting naked and not touching each other during these meetings, and doing this for a period of not less than 200 days? Those bullet points, Mr. Fuller, I guess are at the top of the page 298.
Yes.
Yeah, during the second one and the third one.
Well, the reason for that is that people should be as familiar with each other as they possibly can be before they have sexual intercourse. That's male, female, of course, according to the code. You want to be as familiar with the person that you have sexual intercourse with prior to sexual intercourse. And familiarity means you have to be familiar with what they look like when they don't have their clothes on. Now, there are some people who will say, well, no, you shouldn't see anybody, in the nude or anything like that before you're in a real uptight marital situation. And that can be recognized and taken into account if people want to do that. But according to the code, it's not the best way. The code always tries to take the best way. You want to be absolute about everything, not about some things. You don't want to have to guess about nothing. That's codification. Codification is about eliminating guessing about anything in the universe. Don't guess about a snail. Don't guess about an eagle. Don't guess about an automobile. I mean, what's wrong with your car? Eliminate guessing. Codification is about no guessing at all. It's about knowing and understanding everything. Knowing and understanding everything in fine detail so that you don't have to wonder. There's no wonderment. Getting rid of wonder. That's what the brain is supposed to be doing. Eliminating wonder. According to what? According to compensatory logic. Now, that type of logic may be alien to some people and may not even be acceptable to a lot of people, but it's the position that I have taken because I found out that that works best. the greater the knowledge and understanding of anything, any situation that you're in, the more more power a person has to do what? Eliminate problems, to solve problems. The greater the knowledge and understanding. So if two people are in a room and they are naked, but they are not touching each other, but they intend to be intimate with each other, at least they're familiar with each other's bodies. The bodies are not strange to them, in particular in this day and time. I'll give an example of what could happen that would start an argument. Say a person, is acceptable to another person in everything. They have been out here and been there and whatnot, but they've never seen each other unclothed. So now they decide to, what you call, quote unquote, get married, et cetera, and the fella gets to the bedroom for the first time with his mate, say if it's a male and female, like it ought to be, according to the code, and the lady takes off this and takes off that. Okay, and wait a minute. Well, he thought that from the outside it looked like she had these breasts, because he was a person probably who, that was one of the things that he thought he was attracted to, and it turns out to be something that's not her breasts. Or, in this day and time, suppose her body, because it's always been covered up, is covered with graffiti in the form of the names of other people that she has been with. Jim Williams and Clyde and Kamani and this Kofu and on and on and on. A body completely covered. Now he's saying, well, I married you, but I didn't know that you had all that on your body. You got all these tattoos and whatnot everywhere, and they are men's names that used to be your boyfriends. And I don't want to look at that every time that I see your body. Oh, this is a terrible situation. Now, that might be a kind of a far-fetched illustration, but I'm saying, the point that I'm making, familiarization with everything about a person is supposed to be prior to the first act of sexual intercourse.
Okay.
In other words, you know what you got.
Okay.
You don't have to do no guessing about nothing. All the guessing is supposed to be way ahead.
Okay.
You don't have revelations after you have signed on for a lifetime with somebody.
Okay.
No revelations are supposed to come out after that.
Okay.
Not one.
Not one. Okay. But suppose now if they got this far, where does the word unconditional enter in that? Because if this person, if they love each other, isn't love supposed to be unconditional? But he looks at that, and now he doesn't like that, so that becomes a condition. What say you to that?
Well, because that wasn't one of the conditions, and he's stating that now. All right?
Oh, he's stating
it now. That was a mistake. Now, here's what. Here's what's going on now. A mistake was made because he made an assumption that would just be, when she takes off her clothes, she would look like the average person. I mean, no graffiti, no tattoos, no men's names and whatnot. I mean, below her navel and all this type of stuff. And, because that's a condition. But that wasn't the condition that he was imagining. See, there shouldn't be any imagination about the other person. You're not imagining anything. You know that person as well as it possibly can. Any person can ever get to know a person as to the nth degree. You know exactly what you have, and they know exactly what they have. There's the greatest, I'll put it this way, according to the code. What are the words that cause communications breakdown between people who are in what you call a marital situation or a girlfriend-boyfriend situation, whatever you want to call it, a mateship, according to the code. What are the fatal words that you usually hear over and over again? Usually 3 words, not I love you, is I didn't know. I didn't know you were on parole. I didn't know you were HIV positive. I didn't know you had AIDS. I didn't know that you had 15 children. I didn't know this, and I didn't know that, and I didn't know the other. That's one of the first things that come up. I didn't. If I had known, or sometimes it's if I had known. If I had known you were like that, if I had known something like that would make you mad to the extent that you would go through the house and break up all the furniture, I never would have got involved with you. You are absolutely crazy. I didn't know that. They say, well, I just can't stand the type of thing that you did this morning. So when people do that to me, my mother can tell you, I always went through the house and broke up all the furniture because that's how I vent my anger. Well, I didn't know that. You didn't let me know that about you. You're going to break up all the furniture every time you get mad? All the furniture goes into the street?
Hold that thought, Mr. Fuller. TalkTainmentradio.com is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's a few that I'm going to share with you. Stairway to Heaven with Claude. Talking Sports Plus with Mr. Bobby, and Blue Mood Saturday with Ed Dozier. Now, all these particular shows are exclusive to TalkTainmentRadio.com, and all you have to do is go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, and where it says programs, just click on the programs, and then you may select which program that you would like to sample and see if you like it or if you don't. If you do, then sample it, click and listen to it and see what it's all about. All that and more comes from TalkTainmentRadio.com. That is radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And today's subject, the phone lines, by the way, they are open, 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. The subject is Q&A. Mr. Fuller will take your questions and maybe answers to some. He will address those with suggestions. And we're focusing in on codification in particular, to think, speak, and act in a codified way. And Mr. Fuller, you were speaking about somebody saying, well, I didn't know. Could go ahead and continue with that thought before we move on here.
Yes, I didn't know. Lack of knowledge and understanding is never a healthy thing according to compensatory counter-racist logic, or compensatory logic, period. Universal logic. Knowledge and understanding is something that people should have about everything. If you know and understand your environment, you walk into, you're dropped off from an airplane into a forest, and you know all the different trees. You know which trees have the leaves on them where you can get fruit and eat. And you know the ones, those plants over there on the other side of the river, you know the ones that are poisonous.
Mm-hmm.
That if you, or you know the ones that if you touch, you will break out in hives or something. I mean, you start getting skin diseases and whatnot if you touch this type of leaf, because it does that. It has that effect on the skin. The more you know, the better.
Okay.
That's in any situation. Lack of knowledge and understanding is a plague of the entire universe. This is why people are told, you must go to school. You have to learn something.
All right.
in order to function in this society. And we're going to make it mandatory that you go to school. Otherwise, you're going to make a problem for everybody after you make problems for yourself.
All right. Let's take a phone call. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Good morning, gentlemen. I wanted to go into the book, the original version I have, the United Independent Compensatory Code System, and by Mr. Fuller. Am I on?
Yeah, you're on. Go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Bobby. Hey, Mr. Fuller. What I wanted to ask was on page was 104. I'm gonna start with that one. 104.
What book are you in? The old.
I'm in the original version. 103 starts politics.
Okay, I don't have that one, Mr. Fuller. You have that with you, the original copy.
The original book.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I have it here. But go ahead.
Okay.
He's going to read it to me while I try to go through it.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna start at 104. 103, page 103, and we're talking about politics. So I just wanted to say that in regards to ADOS, demand the American descendants of slavery of reparations and a black agenda, or they plan on, no one's voting to decrease the wealth gap. 1 second.
Hello.
The area 6 of the Code of Politics.
Yes, sir.
You
original
said,
copy, right?
Yes.
Now, it says what now? And what are we talking about?
Okay, we're talking about politics.
Oh, I got it. Go ahead.
Okay. So you said that racist man and racist woman make certain non-whites depend on whites for all their needs in economics. I'm just summarizing. They discourage and prevent through speech and action true education that would produce justice and eliminate white supremacy. They entertain us and themselves by promoting abuse of non-whites. Labor, you said that they do more work, and their work is to maintain the practice of white supremacy. And in law, you said that they practice all law to maintain white supremacy. In politics, the racist men and racist women at no time speak or act in any way to eliminate the practice of white supremacy, and their actions promote confusion in non-white thought, speech, and actions in all things so that they can get or they can act as supreme leaders in religion or of sexual practices to make sure that non-white people are vulnerable at all times. So my question is, could these methods, back to ADOS, what they're asking for in reparations, could these methods and deceptive techniques that support white supremacy be so powerful without wealth? Could they be powerful without the wealth that they have? And could reparations help ADOS implement your two methods of resisting racism, forwardism and open, what is the airism, to fight white supremacy?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes, because of the wealth that they have. Now, what is the wealth that the white supremacists have? That would be the question. What makes a white supremacist wealthy? What makes a white supremacist wealthy is an ideology. And what is that ideology? The ideology of dominating and mistreating people of color. That is a wealthy ideology. Why? Because it produces wealth. Somebody thought up a system of someone looked out over the world, presumably someone who classified themselves as white, based on skin color, and a few of things associated with skin color, whatever that might be. And they said, you know what? What we need is to set up a royalist system. We need to try it. People that look like me. We can set up a royalist system, not based on hierarchy, based on ancient history and all like that, and who your grandparents were, and etc. We can set up a royalist system based on color. Now, we have always had kings and queens around for some time, all right, based on what we call blue blood, even though there's no such thing as blue blood, but we called it that, all right? But they said, we can set it up on skin color. And I guess, see, I wasn't there. I don't even know how it got started or when, but presumably it got started because we got it. And somebody said, well, what do you mean by skin color? Well, the color of somebody's skin. If the skin is dark, or if it's very dark, or if it's what you call black or dark brown, and then anything that's got color in it, I mean, we call it skin on a person, that person would be in a category that's not royal. Okay, what do you mean by not royal? Well, that person will mean that will be a person, but the person is not entitled to anything except to be dominated and mistreated by people who are royal. Oh, okay. So who would these people be? Well, it would be people that we would call white people. So it would be white people and non-white people. That would be the major categories. And the white people would be white supremacists. We would be supreme over everybody who is non-royal. And the non-royal people will be everybody who has color in his or her skin. And so they came up with that idea, according to all the evidence. Somebody did. I don't know when. That's been argumentative about that. But that's exactly what happened. And it turned out to be the greatest, wealthiest political idea, religious idea, economic idea, if you want to put it in that category, sexual idea, labor idea, in all the areas of activity of any other philosophy ever thought up among the people of what we call the planet Earth. Nothing has proven to be more powerful. And so that's the wealth of it. It's an idea. The idea is in the very wealth. Wealth means you came up with something that works, that's more powerful than anything else. That's wealth. See, when you use the word wealth, that's what wealth is.
Okay. So, Doc, how do you push your ideology then? How could what do we need to push that ideology worldwide then?
That's what the book that you're reading is for. It's to start us in that direction. Because they had, the reason why is that they had a code for doing it. Now, what is a code? A code is how you think, how you speak, and how you act in all areas of activity. It means the things that you say and the things that you do, because everything is about doing and saying. And they covered every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. In other words, in all these areas of activity, there are things that you do and things that you do. There are things that you say and things that you don't say, each and every day. And that is a code that the white supremacists thought up. It's a white code, a white supremacist code. Now, the question was, I want to be focused now.
Yes.
The question was, how do you counteract that? You have to have a counter code. That's where the logic is. The victims of racism, white supremacy, have never had a code. We've just had a whole bunch of philosophies and whatnot that are abstract, but not the details of what you do and what you don't do. As an individual every day, it's got to be something that's tailored to the individual. What you do and what you don't do. What you say and what you don't say. We've never even attempted to come up with a code. We just get up and say, things ain't the way they ought to be. Things ain't right. They ain't treating me right. And the world is all messed up. And so let's clap our hands and jump up and down and spin around and change our hairdos and all like that. And then when we wake up the next day, everything should be in place. That's not a code. A code is detail. Detail how? Things that you do and things that you don't do. Things that you say and things that you don't say under any circumstance. And you lock that into your mind and your actions, your speech, and then, but it will be designed to counter their code. See, for everything that they have in their code, you have to have something that counteracts that code. Mm-hmm. Just like, well, I don't like to use the illustration of boxing, but you can use baseball or anything, football. A lot of people are familiar with that. Football has a code.
Yes.
That other team has a code. Hey, when you hear that quarterback is doing what? Speaking in code. Mm-hmm. Do this, and then hi. And then somebody runs this way, and another person runs that way, and another person goes all the way down the field. That's a code, folks.
Okay.
We don't have anything like that.
All right,
that's all we really need.
Okay, pardon me, Mr. Fuller. I have to do this. TalkTameRadio.com. We go where you go. Just download the TalkTameRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Now, our subject today is actually a Q&A, and people have called in with Q&A, and Mr. Fuller was addressing the first question that we had this morning, but we have to allow the callers to come in. But it is at this time, and we certainly didn't mean to interrupt Mr. Fuller, but we have to do this. It is at this time that we have Mr. Fuller speak about his book briefly, and then we'll try to go back to the callers, and hopefully we'll get the first question answered. Mr. Fuller, speak about your book, please.
Yes, and I'm going to speak about the book right after this, but I have to say this. I want to express to the caller, if I sounded a bit animated, I shouldn't have done that. I should have been much calmer. That's a part of the code, too. I have to practice that, being calm when I'm trying to explain something, and be more paced than I am. That is a fault of mine. But and people need to point it out to me when I'm doing that. Calm down and be more slower and precise, because when I become more animated, I have a tendency to kind of rush ahead, because we do have time constraints. But let me get to the book. You can get to the book that we're talking about now. The code, that's what I call it. It's not a complete code, because there's no such thing as a complete code until all the problems are solved. But it's a guideline for having a code that will be a complete code for doing what? For solving a problem. For every problem that was ever solved in the universe, there was a code for doing so. There is a code for solving every problem, but you have to have one, or the problem doesn't get solved. It's a code for doing everything: electrical code, plumbing code. If you're going to lay down a street in a city, you have to go by some type of code when you mix that concrete. There's a code for mixing concrete, or you're going to come up with something that, as soon as you get it out there on the road, you're going to have to do it all over again next week. Because now, when the sun hits it, on account of it didn't follow the code, you got a lot of concrete that's all buckled and whatnot. And cars are bouncing all over the place and running into things and running off the road because there's a lot of cracks and whatnot. So somebody had to figure out, what is the code for making concrete for the type of weather that we have? That's a code. So in order to get the book that leads us in this direction, I hope, go to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. Because ultimately, when you replace the system of racism, counter-racist logic, or logic period, means when you replace something, you're going to have, when you take something away, you should replace it with something else that's better. What would be better than racism? What would be better than racism is justice. So the name of the website that you go to get the book is producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. Because ultimately, that's what we're supposed to be producing. Because there's no point in getting rid of racism if you're not going to replace it with something that's better than racism. And that would be justice. Go to producejustice.com, and the method for ordering will be there. That's the book that I have put out.
Okay, there you have it. We will try to get back to that first question, Mr. Fuller, because there were two more parts to it. Let's take this phone call. Okay, caller, you're on with Mr. Neely Fuller. What is your question, please?
How you doing, Mr. Fuller and Mr. Bobby? I got two questions now, because I'm just looking at the code book right now. What is it codified to be angry? What does the code say exactly about it being about anger? Because I know as a black male, only time I'm allowed to be angry is towards other black people. So what's the code say about being angry, Mr. Fuller?
Well, what we do is take anger apart. What causes anger? Anger, you usually get angry when you don't know what to do about something. That's what makes you angry. You're in a situation and you get frustrated. See, first thing that happens, you get frustrated. Frustration comes from what? Confusion. Confusion about what? About it's a situation you ran into and all of a sudden you don't know what to do about it right away to go about taking care of that situation in the best possible manner that can be done. In other words, for every situation, for every poison, there is an antidote. So if you don't have the antidote to a poison, you get frustrated, and then you get confused. And confusion brings about anger. All right? That's where you're going with it. When you see anybody angry, they are confused. Confused about what? About the best way of going about resolving whatever's going on. If you ever notice that a calm person that walks up into a situation where everybody's screaming and yelling and running around in circles, the person who is calm is usually the person that knows the solution to the problem. That one person that walks through the crowd and says, hey, the reason you all are having all of this, disease or whatever it is and all like that, that you're not using the correct combination of medicines. Now here, I'm going to mix this with this and mix that with that. I want everybody to take a drink of it, and then your headaches will be gone, because everybody here has got a headache. You said something is wrong, and everybody here is angry, and everybody here is confused and whatnot. But you didn't mix the correct concoction together. I knew what the deal was. I made the correct diagnosis. That's why I didn't come in here mad and angry and running all over around the place in a circle like black people do all over the world, because we are angry and confused and frustrated about everything because we don't know the solution to anything. All right? We don't have a method or code for doing anything. The white supremacists have made us that way, and that is the answer.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Information, correct information at the time that you need it will keep you from being angry every time. You will not be angry if you've got the correct information at the time that you need it, and you can act on that information and get the things done the way they ought to be done. You will never be angry. That's all. Information.
Okay.
Information. Thank you for that very precise
What is your
answer.
second question, sir?
My second question is on page 445 of the Revised Expanded Edition.
Okay, 445.
And that's where we have all the quotes. And
Okay.
it's the second line from the bottom. It says, "Be thankful to the Creator of you for every breath that we have ever received, and for every breath that you will ever receive. Each one has been a great gift." And the question is, why be thankful for every breath as a prisoner of war? And/or why is it a gift to be able to breathe in prison? That's like a chicken being able to breathe in a slaughterhouse, or a cow being able to breathe in a slaughterhouse. Why be thankful for every breath as a prisoner of war?
The answer to that is, logically speaking, because the code says always follow the logic. If you're breathing, that means you are here, or wherever you are, you're breathing. That's the first thing you do when you come into the universe as a person. You're not really a person, they say, what they call a live person, because a dead person isn't really a person anyway, all right, once they're dead. But you, the first thing that happens when you come into the world is that doctor sees to it, if it's a doctor there, that you are breathing. So, when you breathe, you inhale. That's the first act of breathing. You inhale for the first time, then you exhale. Okay? And then you inhale and you exhale, and you continue to do that. It's called breathing. And as long as you are breathing, you should keep in mind, whenever your breath starts working on your mind and telling you something about you have a mind or that you're here. Because when you're breathing, that first breath that you take, you don't even know that you're here because your mind is not working on the first breath. But you become aware that you are something that is here and that you are breathing. Now, you didn't do any of this yourself. So therefore, your obligation is to use every breath that you take, that inhaling and that exhaling, to pay for that first breath that you took. Because you're breathing all day long. I don't know how many breaths I have taken, inhale and exhale, even as I speak now. I mean, by the millions. I don't know. I couldn't give you a figure. I mean, but I've done nothing to earn that. I didn't even know I was breathing. I didn't even know what breath was when I first came into the world. I don't remember it anyway. All right? Even if I did know it, I don't remember it now. I don't remember the day that I was born. Somebody told me what day I was born and when and under what circumstances. I don't remember any of that. But presumably, I did breathe, something called breathing. Now, I have to compensate whatever the source is that saw to it that I did that. The inventor of breathing. That's why when people ask me, according to the code, people ask me, well, what did your ancestors do, Fuller? I said, my ancestor invented breathing. And it don't get no better than that.
And thinking, too.
My ancestor, breathing comes before thinking, all right? So I go right to the core. My ancestor invented breathing. So if the average person I say that to thinks of what? They say, well, are you talking about, you must be talking about God then. God invented breathing. I say, you can call it what you want to, but you asked me about my ancestor. And so my ancestor would be what you would call God. But whatever invented breathing is my ancestor. I don't go into this thing about building the pyramids and all this. I go right to right to what I know for a fact. And how do I know my ancestor invented breathing? Because I'm breathing. See, I got evidence that my ancestor invented breathing. Something had me breathing before I knew that I was breathing, which means I have an ancestor. So whatever came before me that started me to breathing, that's my main ancestor. I mean, a person can say, well, I got an ancestor. I mean, I got an aunt that goes way back to the Ivory Coast. I got a cousin that was in London, and that's what they call ancestors. I go right to the ancestor. My ancestor invented breathing, and nothing gets better than breathing, because I don't know of anything that doesn't breathe, including plants, trees. They got to breathe. They tell me, hey, everything that amounts to anything breathes. It collects something out of something. It takes in air. Things begin to die when you don't have air. That's what I've been told. I believe that. I see evidence of that. So that's what I go with.
Okay. All right, my brother.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Again, my name is Mansour Celestin, and to Talktainment Radio, I will be making a donation this week, too, so you can look forward to that. I encourage everyone, too, who values this information.
All right.
And take care. You guys have a good day.
All right, thank you, brother. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. Stay tuned. Well, first of all, thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the second hour, the donate hour on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller and co-host Mr. Bobby. All that and more coming up next.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Alrighty, welcome to the second hour of the compensatory concept with Neely Fuller Jr. and, co-host Mr. Bobby on TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. On TalkTainmentRadio.com. I'm Mr. Bobby, the co-host, and this is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. To get the call into the show, you can by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I will try to get to those as many as I can, and we'll go from there. Let's see here, Mr. Fuller. We were into that question, and then that's the thing about radio. Sometimes you lose the page, and I'm sorry, April, that is gone. And she had two more questions on there. If I could find that, I will, because I wanted to get finished with what she had to say. So maybe. Hope I didn't erase that, Mr. Fuller, because that was... So in the meantime, I'll tell you what, we'll take this question and I'll try to find it. Caller, you are on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Hi, this is Ernest calling again from Ferguson, and I'm still trying to recover with that information you gave me about our ancestors. Brilliant put. It blew my mind. But my question is, along the same lines, what is the code for eating? I know in the code book you said we should drink more water and eat less food. Does that mean we should be fasting, Mr. Fuller?
Well, it just means drink more water and eat less food because somebody told me, now I don't even know if it's true or not, but I'm spinning the roulette wheel on that one because it may not be. Water might be a type of food. It depends on what you want to mean by food. That's what I mean by words. It can be tricky. But I understand that people are made up mostly of water because the entire world is made up mostly of water. So, and people say that one of the healthiest type of flesh that you can eat, if you're going to be a flesh eater, it's best to eat what? Something that comes out of water. something that stays in water most of the time. And what would that be? Some type of fish. They say fish is better than what you call a land animal. That fish for the body of a person is better than what we call meats, like animals, like buffalo, say, or cow. That's beef. These are what you call land animals. They are not known too much to go into water. There are some, buffalo and whatnot, and some type of cows and whatnot. They go into the water a lot, but they don't really. That's not their usual habitat. They spend a lot of time in the water. Elephants like water. Elephants, everything likes water that has breath in it and whatnot, that moves around. You like water. But people have been given a lot of poison water, and the white supremacists definitely have poisoned just about everything that looks like water. I mean, say that soda pop, whiskey, and anything that looks like water or has a watery substance, I mean, drink that, but don't drink water, all right? But everything that drinks water, elephants take in a lot of water. And look at an elephant, hippopotamus, the hippopotamus, from what I've seen, they like water. They like to get right into it, and just roll around in it. Muddy water, but water, and swim around in it. Even the animals that look like they can't swim, but they can. and so they're in water. So water is very compatible with the body of a person. But the white supremacist says, hey, this tastes like water. This ain't nothing but water. Get rid of this. Put some chemicals in it. Put some coloring in it. Put it in a vending machine. Now you're talking. Now I'll sell it to you. And then among a lot of people that they have conquered, they gave them what? Fire water. Hey, Chief, take a swig of this. And so this person who is called the Indian chief, he looks at it and says, well, I don't know about that. What it looks like water, but, it's clear, or it got a little bit of coloring in it. Say, yeah, but this water is special. It's got fire. This is water like you've never had before, Chief. So, like a deceiver will do, like somebody who's trying to trick you.
Yes.
The white supremacists, they'll take a little swig of that fire water, they call it. They'll say, see, that tastes good to me. Ah, boy, that tastes good. That's got a nice tang to it. So you take a little taste, Chief. It's not going to taste like water. It's going to have a little tang to it. But you just keep at it. You're going to learn to love it. So the chief sat there at Thanksgiving Day, or whatever you want to call it, and he took a swig, all right? And then another swig. So that's how the white supremacists do.
Yes.
On anything. They do that with sex and everything else. Whatever they're trying to trick you into doing, they'll do it first because they know that's the way to trick people.
Yes.
All right? That's the way to deceive people. They'll do it first and do quite a bit of it. Then they'll have you doing twice as much and 3 times as much. And what is happening is you wind up drunk before they wind up drunk. That's where the key is. So then the chief, at a certain point, the white supremacists stop drinking that fire water, all right? But the chief is still drinking. And then that's when he tells the chief, sign here. Give me Manhattan, all right? You got a place over there that you call Manhattan, all right? Manhattan is now mine, Chief, and you signed it away. You gave it to me on this piece of paper. And the chief said, I don't remember none of that. Say, yeah, you didn't understand my fire water.
Yeah.
But you understand it now that you're sober, but it's too late now.
It's too late.
Get off of my land.
All righty. Let's continue on with April's question, Mr. Fuller. She is saying here on page 307 of the Revised Expanded Edition, she says of the code book, paragraph 2, it states, quote, there is not, nor should there be any limit with regard to the total number of non-white people that a non-white person chooses to interact with in regards to the aforementioned form of compensatory sexual social intimacy. End of that quote. Mr. Fuller, are you saying there should be no limit to the number of sex partners a non-white person has? And if so, how is this constructive under the system of white supremacy?
Depends on circumstances. Like everything in the code, there should be no limit that's set by whom? Well, the limits are set by the people themselves, depending on what it is you're trying to do. That's what you go by. See, it's a hypothetical thing that has to do with situations. What is the situation? You might be in a place where that would work and produce the best results. See, it's strictly a hypothetical.
Okay.
It may not apply to most circumstances, but it might apply to some circumstances.
Okay.
See what I mean? Like everything in the code is circumstantial. See, some things you do under some circumstance, you definitely don't do in another circumstance.
Yes, sir.
And that's all through the code. That's what a code is.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the plumbing code and the electrical code. You say, well, yeah, that plumbing code will work here in Guatemala, all right, because the weather's hot in Guatemala. But that same plumbing code will not work in the Arctic Circle.
Mm-hmm.
If you go up there with that plumbing code, your pipes are going to freeze. I mean, and you ain't going to get no liquid going through it, and you're going to be in big trouble.
Okay. We're speaking with Neely Fuller, and today's topic is the Q&A. And we're Mr. Fuller, well, at least this is the way I interpret it, is helping us to train ourselves in thinking codification, in particular, think, speak, and act. Everything that I've detected that he said, there's even a code to that, into thinking, even the last example we gave, speaking and acting. And this is what we are to be focused in on doing. Finally, she says, Mr. Fuller, she says, is there any value in non-white people waiting until marriage to engage in sexual intercourse? Why or why not? Thank you for answering my questions.
Well, what it comes down to the definition of marriage. Some people used to call it just jumping the broom. That was a marriage. See, so what is marriage? When does marriage start? See, we have to think outside the box, because codification is about definitely thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
Because, the white supremacists love to put black people in boxes, and as soon as possible, a box called a coffin, which we are very familiar with. Black people are very familiar with coffins. And we fill those boxes, like you wouldn't believe.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and look forward to filling them. So we're kind of thinking outside the boxes, thinking universal. Think universal. Think, about all the different millions of stars and planets. Think of all the possibilities that while you're breathing, the things you could be doing that are much better than the things you are doing, the things that are most constructive. That is what you go by in answer to this specific question. What is constructive and what is non-constructive? These are the only two criteria to make everything real simple, because basically codification is simple, because everything is divided into one of two categories. That which is constructive, has a constructive effect, in other words, builds up, problem solves, and that which is non-constructive, which is that which sustains a problem or makes a new problem.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So one of the codification directions is solve problems without making any. So anytime you do anything constructive or in a constructive manner that produces a constructive result, regardless of what people are used to doing, If it produces a constructive result, go with it. If it has a non-constructive result, regardless of tradition and custom, see, because you've got to really watch these traditions and customs. Racism is a tradition and a custom. So people are always saying, hold on to your customs.
Mm-hmm.
This is an old black custom. But you should examine everybody's custom and ask one question. Is it constructive or is it non-constructive? Because there's no such thing as in between. And if it's non-constructive, get rid of it. I don't care how long people have been doing it. I don't care if Grandma Moses or whomever, said this is the thing to do. No. If it has a non-constructive effect, no. That's something you don't do.
Okay.
It's strictly mechanical.
All righty.
It ain't personal, it's business.
All right. TalkTameRadio.com is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now here's 3 that I'm going to share with you. Wiggins World with Stacey Wiggins, All in the Family with S. Yolanda Robinson, and This is Libby. Now these shows are exclusive to the TalkTameRadio.com family, and all you have to do is go to the TalkTameRadio.com homepage and click on programs, and there is a list of programs that you can sample to see if you really like these programs or if you don't like them. So all you have to do, just go there and do that, and then hit a like or share or subscribe, whatever is there. All that from TalkTameRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. Our topic today is really a Q&A with Mr. Fuller, answering or making suggestions to your questions, and we're focusing in on how to think, act, and speak in continually codification or codified way. Think, speak, or act, even when you ask questions here. Mr. Fuller, recently, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has been labeled a racist by many, particularly a lot of white people, black people. He's attacked Al Sharpton and Elijah Cummings. He has even made disparaging comments about the city of Baltimore, only to come to find out that his family or son-in-law, Mr. Kirshner, owns many of the housing units there. I think he called them rat-infested or whatever. What does the code say about, in particular, a person who does that?
Well, you ask questions about what the person is saying. That's the codified way. This is real important, folks. That's why I tried to write a book that says, have a code. Have a code. Everybody should be trying to write code. Not just Neely Fuller. Write code. What is code? Saying the best possible thing that anybody can ever say. I'm not saying that I'm doing it, but I'm trying. The best possible thing about everything that calls for somebody to say something. You want to be the person that stands up and says something that's better than anybody will ever say it in the whole history of the universe, past, present, and future. That should be your goal when you stand up to say anything. I'm going to say it better than anybody can ever say it. It will never be beat. Now, you're not likely to reach that goal, but that should be what you have in mind in doing. We'll Neely Fuller and everybody else is a long ways from doing that, but that should be the way that we think, okay? Because there's a code for everything. There's a best way to do everything, and there's a worse way to do everything. Mm-hmm. I don't care what it is.
Yes, sir.
So when Mr. Trump or anybody else says something, first thing you should do is what the code says do, think. And you think about what? Think about what he's saying.
Okay.
All right? Then before you speak, you do that thinking, and then you codify whatever it is you're going to say.
Okay.
All right? So what does the code say, how all problems are solved?
Through questions and answers.
Questions and answers. So if I was around Mr. Trump, I wouldn't have a lot of statements to make, and I certainly wouldn't do any name calling. start calling them names. No, that's not the best way to get things done, according to the code, ever. You don't do any name calling. What you do is ask questions about what is being said. Just like on this program, this is about questions and answers. Questions and answers. This is the way you get things done. So whatever Mr. Trump was saying, if he said rat-infested, rodent, you just write down what he said. Like I have it right here before me. I see the word rodent written. So what did I do? I did this morning, folks. I'm saying this on air. This is what I did this morning. I looked up, since that was a word that was reported that somebody used. I think it was Mr. Trump. He may have said it.
He did say this.
He said rodent?
Yeah, he said it.
I looked up rodent in a dictionary, not in my word guide because I don't have it in there. And I looked it up. It said squirrels, beavers, and rats. Now, beavers are a protected species in some places. Now, rats are not because there's so many of them. But here in Washington, D.C., we got another rodent right there in Lafayette Square Park that's been there as long as I've been in Washington, D.C., and that is what? Squirrels. Squirrels are rodents. People used to hunt squirrels and do what? Through the 1940s and 50s, I know for a fact, and the early 1960s, there were people who went out and hunted squirrels. And you know what they would do after they hunted them and found them and killed them?
I believe they ate them.
They ate squirrels. That's a rodent. Those squirrels like you see in the parks now, all right? But they are rodents. A rat is a rodent, and a squirrel is a rodent. And somebody told me a long time ago, in some parts of the world, rats are eaten by people. Okay? So, but getting back to just in front of the White House in Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania Avenue, there is a park right across the street that I have visited on many occasions, or passed through it, or passed by it, called Lafayette Square Park. And there are rodents that climb trees and run around and scamper around and look for something to eat and come up to people, I mean, boldly looking for people to give them something to eat, and they are called squirrels. So would you say from that, Mr. Trump or anybody else, Lafayette Square Park, Washington, D.C., a place where everybody comes to visit, is full of rodents? Because you got a park right across from the warehouse, the White House, that's always had rodents in it. I've seen them. I have seen them, folks. Now, I don't know if they ran them all off by now, since Mr. Trump has said that, but I think you might find some there this morning.
But Mr. Fuller,
here in 2019. Hello?
But Mr. Fuller, he identified not Washington, but Baltimore. He didn't say nothing about Lafayette Park across the street from the White House.
That's why I'm saying about questions.
Okay.
Since a rat is a rodent,
yes,
and a squirrel is a rodent, because
yes,
immediately, see, when you use words are important.
Yes.
What is a rodent?
Okay.
All right. Also, I've heard another term being used lately, human being. Just in the last, somebody said something about, Mr. Trump said something about human beings would not live in Baltimore or something. Am I getting that correct?
It was something to that effect.
Gotta get it correctly now.
Yes,
I can't.
Something to that effect.
I don't want to say anything that somebody didn't say.
Okay.
I mean, code says that is an absolute no-no.
Yes.
Don't ever say that somebody said something that they didn't say.
Yes. All right. Continue.
So you got to be careful.
All right.
But I understand that the term human being has been used by somebody.
Okay. All right.
All right. That human beings wouldn't live in Baltimore. Somebody said that or something. Or they implied that.
Implied. Okay.
Well, now, are you saying in a confine of a city? Now, this is a question. A whole city? That human beings And then, first of all, what is a human being? Now, I put it in the textbook. Human beings don't exist in a system of white supremacy. Now, am I telling the truth, or am I saying something that is false?
Some would say
because what is a human being? A human being is a person that a being in the form of a person that practices humanity or humaneness. Now, what is humanity or humaneness? It means, for one thing, you have to practice justice in order to be a human being.
Correct.
You can be a being, but you are not human or humane if you don't practice justice.
Okay.
See, that's what I mean by paying attention to detail.
Now, what you're saying is correct, but Mr. Trump specified, and you're sticking with this. He specified a certain city, Baltimore, and made these remarks. You're using all these examples, which is good, but he was specific in his criticism of Baltimore and Elijah Cummings. I mean, there is no ifs, ands, and buts about it if you want to go by his words. These were words that came out of his mouth.
But he was making accusations.
Okay.
So if a person makes an accusation, the first thing you want to know about this is the accusation true? Not who's saying it. So the accusation was that there is filth in Baltimore and that there are rodents in Baltimore. Well, what I did with my little illustration, there are rodents across the street. Now, I've seen them from the White House. Now, what does that say about the person that's in the White House? If they got rodents running all around for visitors to come and feed and look at and talk about how cute they are, I guess some of them run across the street, Pennsylvania Avenue, and run across the White House lawn. Now, what does that mean? When you have a person in the White House who's talking about rodent infested, but you got squirrels on the White House lawn. But that's what, some people would call a legitimate rodent, but it's still a rodent, R-O-D-E-N-T. So all I'm doing is just asking questions. See, I'm not condemning anybody. I can't. See? And a victim of white supremacy should be very careful about accusing anybody of being anything. Very careful. Because we are always accused of this, that, and the other. But ask questions about everything. Everything. Ask questions about. Why? Because through the process of questions and answers, everybody is always taken right where they need to be. Oh. That's a universal law.
Okay.
The process of, like on this program, the process of questions and answers may not take anybody where they want to be, but it'll take everybody where they ought to be. Now, that's code.
Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Yes, this is Ernest from Ferguson again. On question or page 408 of the code book, it says, if you rearrange the language, you also rearrange the way people think, speak, and act. So my question to you, Mr. Fuller, do we need to get back to our native, our natural, creator-given language in order to speak, think, and act correctly?
Well, I don't know what our native language is. What is our? See, that calls for a question. What is the native language of we, meaning I guess non-white people? What is the native language? What is language? I understand that there are thousands and thousands of languages all over the world. So, first of all, what is a language? And then second, we're talking about questions now. What is a native language? Because it's been my experience that all languages change constantly. In the English language, it certainly changes. Everybody who writes a hip-hop song can tell you that, because they do that. They change the language. People that write what we call hip-hop. At one time, there was no such thing as hip-hop. So hip-hop became a part of a language called the English language. This person would say, well, what is hip-hop? What is rap? They'd say, well, I've heard of people, beating a rap, meaning they've been accused of a crime and whatnot. But is there a new way of looking at the word rap?
Okay, Mr. Fuller, this is from Jason. He said this: should white people have celebrations and or parties under the system of racism, white supremacy?
No celebrations. I say don't celebrate, educate. Now, are you talking about white people or non-white people?
He said, I believe he said white people. I just hit the...
He said white people?
Wait a minute, let me see if I can get it back. Let me see, okay. He said white people, that's what it is. He said what he said. He said, should white people have celebrations and or parties under the system of racism, white supremacy?
Depends on what they're doing and whether or not it's in support of the system of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
If it directly or indirectly supports any aspect of the system of white supremacy, nobody should do that. But if it has any aspect of supporting a system of justice, meaning guaranteeing that no person is mistreated, that's number one. And number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. These are the only type of parties or celebrations, if you want to call them that anybody should be having anywhere on the planet. You don't recommend any type of activities that do not have that as the goal.
Okay.
Period. In other words, you're trying to replace the system of racism with a system of justice, and justice means guaranteeing that every person doesn't get mistreated. No person gets mistreated. And number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, you can call it a party, an educational ceremony, or a gathering, or people just getting together, or a church, or a temple, or a mosque, or a synagogue, or a picnic, whatever term you want to call it. Stand back and look at it and say, does this have anything to do with problem solving in the most constructive manner? Because every move, particularly that black people are involved in, non-white people, and you request of white people, you raise the question, anything that you see anybody doing, and you are told to make a comment about it, if you're going to make a comment, you put it in the form of a question. Is this going to have a constructive result, or is this going to have a non-constructive result? Because there's no such thing as in between.
Okay.
Any time of day or night, anywhere on the planet involving anybody, white or non-white, it's either going to produce something that's constructive or something that's non-constructive.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you are with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Mr. Fuller.
Hello.
Yes, sir. How you doing today?
Still learning.
Good, good. Oh, you said this morning that we need to have a code. We need to say something better than what the other person said. While saying that, why did you feel the need to write the code book if we take our religious text, the Bible, the Talmud, the Quran, and those things have good suggestions about how to treat people? My question is, why did you feel the need to write the code book if we had those books already existing?
Oh, this is just an addition, an extension to anything that is of constructive value. People have asked me, well, Fuller, these books, that book that you have, is that the whole code? And I give him or her, the logical answer. It's no such thing. The answer is no. It's no such thing as a whole code until all problems are solved in the most constructive manner. Then you have a whole code. Not 1 minute before. Every problem on the planet, and every problem in the known universe has been solved in the best possible manner with the most constructive result that anybody can ever conceive of. You don't have a whole code. So right now, we don't have much of a code for anything that's working. And people will say, well, these codes exist on paper, but see, it's got to exist in reality. Just something written down as a guide, and the guide is not being followed, doesn't exist until it is followed. So it means absolutely nothing. It's just people going through motions. Well, I got the Bible, I got the Quran, I got the Talmud, I got all the religious writings, I got all the Hindu scriptures, I got all the Buddhist writings, I got everything that Confucius ever said. I got it on my shelf. All right. Is every problem solved in the most constructive manner in the entire universe as we know it? And if the answer is no, then you don't have nothing.
Yes.
Yeah, all this stuff don't mean nothing, including all the Neely Fuller stuff. It means nothing. Nothing means anything until it gets done. Now, people that play football understand that and all like that. We understand that when it comes to sports. Like, what did that coach say? I think it's Vince Lombardi. He said, winning is everything, or something to that effect. Like, running up and down the field, which is what everybody's going around saying, I got the solution to this, but people won't listen to me. Somebody said that to me one day. They say, Fuller, I got the solution to the race problem. I just can't get these black people to listen to what I got to say. I say, then you don't have the solution. Because in order to have the solution, the problem is solved. That's the only way you prove you got the solution to anything. Walking around talking about you got the solution in theory. Theory means absolutely nothing until it's put into practice, including everything that Neely Fuller wrote.
Oh.
That's why I put that last word in the title. What is it? Concept.
Concept.
I have a concept. I'm not sure that this will work. It doesn't, like Mr. Vince Lombardi said, hey, it ain't over till it's over. Some football coach said that. Yeah.
Okay.
In other words, 99.5 won't do. I've heard preachers say that.
Yes.
Hey, if you're supposed to make 100 yards on this run, and you made 99.5 yards, but you didn't make the 100, you didn't do nothing.
Well, let me make this.
That's the way that's the way codification is.
Okay.
You don't get paid for effort. Period. You get the job done or else.
Okay. TalkTameAtRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTameAtRadio.com app to your cell or tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, and it is at this specific time that we have Mr. Fuller address his book. Mr. Fuller?
Yes. You can get my little quote-unquote 2 cents of ideas of a concept for solving the race problem, which is my goal, by going to producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is the method for ordering the basic textbook, which is the only thing that's up there now. I'm trying to get the original back up there and the word guide that came out in 2010 Words are very important because that's what is in a book. Words. Words are supposed to mean something. What do words supposed to mean? Problem solving. Every word, anytime you pick up a book and read words in a book, those words are supposed to help you to think about solving a problem one way or another, small or large, or that book shouldn't have even been written. It should not have even been written. No book should be written except with the intention of solving problems without making any. Every book that anybody ever writes should be for that purpose. When you close that book after having read it, and it didn't help you to solve a problem that needed solving, that was what you might call a worthless book. Because every book that everybody writes anywhere in the universe should be about how to solve a problem without making any in the most constructive manner. Otherwise, that book should be listed as a book that is worth less. Worth less than what? Than a book that helps you to solve problems. Because if it didn't help you to solve a problem. So this book is designed to help people who are victims of racism, I hope, to solve the problem of racism by doing what? Replacing the system, the entire system of racism as an individual person. You do your thing. That's what the book is supposed to be trying to do. To solve the problem of racism by ending racism and replacing it with a system of justice. If the book doesn't help an individual person to do that, my book, Neely Fuller's book, is worth less. Worth less than what? Than all the books and suggestions and the things, the speeches that people make that best help to get the job done. But since nobody has done the job yet that I know of, because I'm familiar with the problem, but I'm not familiar with the job, with the problem being solved. I don't think anybody is, because I say the problem hasn't been solved. If the problem had already been solved, wouldn't be any need for my book. But the whole idea is for this book, by going to producejustice.com, to get rid of racism and then get rid of everything that is incorrect in people, and then go further than that, establish through that process universal man and universal woman, rather than have what we have now on this planet, and that is racist man and racist woman and their victims. This planet that we have been given needs to have more than that. We need to show that we appreciate this planet that we have been given better than we have been shown that appreciation. We got this thing called racism that dominates everything that people do, and it has poisoned everything that people do on this planet. And it needs to come up with a better system, and that better system would be to replace racist man and racist woman with universal man and universal woman in the form of all people of whatever color or non-color, doing the correct thing by each other all the time. That should be the ultimate goal. But we don't have that now. We just got racists and their victims. And that's a shame on everybody. A shame on all of us. Both the people who are practicing racism and us, myself included, who are victims of it, and we're not getting rid of this mess expeditiously in the most efficient manner and coming up with a formula that should have existed in the first place that is compatible with the best that there is possibly can be among the people of this universe, rather than these death worshippers like the white supremacists. They love death, and they teach everybody else to love death and not life. The victims. We, non-white people, we black people, we worship death. That's why we'll gather to a funeral faster than we'll gather to anything other than a rock concert or something that's going to lead to somebody dying. All right? But we have been taught that by the white supremacists. Death is a wonderful thing. A 9mm is better than a person breathing. What kind of nonsense is this? But the white supremacists will worship that 9mm like a god and tell us to do the same thing. Excuse me for digressing, but that's what the book is all about. I hope I'm not digressing. I'm explaining what the book is all about. Getting rid of all this garbage and coming up with some food for humanity that will last forever. Universal man, universal woman. You can get it by going to producejustice.com. I hope it might be one or two things in there we can use to send us along this journey.
Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Hi, can I be heard? Yes, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have a question about a work-related issue. A store manager told me, he said, well, we really like you, but if you don't pick your pace up, then we might have to let you go. And so I know words are very tricky, but just going over that, them saying we like you, but if you don't pick up the pace, we might have to let you go. And I was hoping that you could help me to interpret that and to be able to respond in a codified manner. Thank you.
Oh, you have been asked to do something. That's tailor-made for the code. Code is about doing something. You have been asked to do something. What were you asked to do, sir? Pick up the pace. Is that correct?
Yes.
What you do is say, I want details of how to, quote, unquote, pick up the pace. Whatever that is. You want an explanation for how do you go about doing that? How? How does anybody go about doing it? Not just you. How would they go about picking up the pace if they were doing what you're doing? Could they pick up the pace? These are questions. See, the question mode. Don't argue. You're not in an arguing position, and you shouldn't be. You should never be in an arguing position. You don't have arguments with anybody. You ask questions. Questions lead to what you might call civil conversations and problem solving. So the problem here is, apparently, there is something called a pace that you have not picked up. So how, ma'am, do I go about picking up the pace? And so this pace that they want you to pick up, now if it means, evidently it means you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, or that you should be doing something that you're not doing. It's not two ways to go with it. You're doing something you shouldn't be doing, or you should be doing something that you're not doing. Then the question is, not them just telling you, because this is under labor in the code, because they'll tell you to pick up the pace, but you want to know how. And now, that's the next thing you want to know, is how. And the third thing, and here is the thing that's really important, you want somebody to demonstrate how that pace is picked up. This is extremely important for everybody who's listening to this program today, where jobs are concerned. You always want someone who knows how to pick up that pace, or whatever it is you're asked to do. You want it demonstrated exactly how it's done. the exact way that it's done. And then not only after it's demonstrated, you want to do it just the way that they told you to do it while they stand there and watch. And not only the way they told you to do it, but the way they demonstrated that it is done. So that they can say they did what? That's what you call due process. Due process means go about doing everything the correct way. That's what due process means. That's a constitutional requirement in the Northwestern Hemisphere. Due process, Fifth Amendment to a Constitution. So they show you, not just tell you, but they show you how it's done by having somebody do it. And now let's say if the person who they have do it has been doing it for 30 years, but they just started you to doing it this morning. Now a question comes up. That person that you just had do that, who's been doing it for 30 years, did they do it that way 30 years ago when they first did it? Did they pick up that pace? The first time they did it, they had that same pace they had 30 years later? And see if they'll lie or tell the truth. All right? That's why that demonstration is important. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Explanation. Thanks. I'll take that into account. Now, just that last part about we might have to let you go. How do you take that?
How the last part about what?
How the manager said we might have to let you go. How do you take that?
Oh, you take that meaning they're going to fire you.
Okay.
That's what that sounds to me.
I'm sorry,
so
I have to.
That's why I say that you emphasize what it is they want you to do.
Okay.
See, because if you do what they want you to do, they don't have probable cause to fire you.
I'm sorry, I have to cut it off. The music is on.
Yes, sir.
Call back next week, caller. I am so sorry, but the music is on. TalkTimeAtRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. Thanks for listening, and we'll all see you next week. Sorry about that, caller.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power, the world's greatest radio, TalkTainmentRadio.com.